Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's members-only webinar. Over the past few months, many of you have seen the timely market updates that the AfA has shared from our partners at Rotate, and those updates have provided useful snapshots of what's happening across the air cargo landscape, from capacity shifts and trade lane changes to regional disruptions and broader market signals. And so today we're going to take a deeper look. Let me tell you a little bit about Rotate. Rotate's a data software and strategy firm focused specifically on the air cargo industry, and their work helps companies make sense of complex market information, and they turn that data into practical decisions around capacity, pricing, demand, sales opportunities, network strategy, and customer planning. And, you know, that means a lot. That matters a lot to freight forwarders. Our members operate in a market where conditions change quickly and decisions have to be made with incomplete information. So better data does not eliminate the uncertainty, but it can help forwarders see trends earlier, ask better questions, and make more informed commercial and operational choices. So today's session will focus on the latest Rotate report and give us a broader global perspective on the trends shaping the air cargo market. And while recent updates have touched on developments in the Middle East, this discussion is going to expand the lens and connect those regional disruptions to larger global dynamics and what they may mean for freight forwarders in the months ahead. So we appreciate Rotate's continued support of the Air Forwarders Association and their willingness to share these insights with our members. So with that, I want to introduce Ray Zadov from Rotate. Ray, you with us? Can you hear us?
Loud and clear, Brandon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And I know this is going to be a very informative session. Before we get you started, Ray, I just want to remind this audience that, summer's upon us. If you don't believe me, go outside. Here in Washington, tomorrow we're going to be, I think, 102 degrees or somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm sure it's hot where you are too. But I just want to remind you that we're going to be holding a virtual town hall on August 20th at 2 o'clock with the Federal Maritime Commissioner Laura DeBella, who will be with us on August 20th at 2 o'clock. So stay tuned for more information about that. And we'll be sending registration about it. Anyway, let's go back to Ray. Ray, why don't you go ahead and put your screen up so that we can all look at your report and walk us through it, please.
Thanks, Brandon. Good afternoon, everyone. First off, Brandon, thanks for the opportunity to present to the Air Forwarders Association. It's really nice to get introduced to the audience, but it's also looking at the attendee list here. It's nice to see some familiar names out there. So first, I want to talk a little bit more about Rotate. Brandon did a great job of introducing it and setting us up, but Rotate's mission statement is simple. We help you make better commercial decisions. And when we say you, we're focused specifically on the air cargo industry. We don't like thinking of ourselves as a jack of all trades. We focus our expertise on the air cargo industry specifically. We do that three ways: through strategy consulting, software development for airlines, and market data. We are still somewhat of a startup. We were founded in 2022. If you have been in the industry for a while, you may remember an organization from several years ago called Seabury Cargo. Our co-founders were from the former Seabury Cargo organization, which was acquired by Accenture. And now Rotate was founded in the Netherlands in 2022. And actually, this slide is actually a bit out of date now. We're now over 70 team members split across the Netherlands, Malaysia, and my lonely self in the US. Despite us only being around since 2022, we have partnerships all over the industry, whether we're talking about airlines, freight forwarders, ground handlers, airports. We try to represent everybody who adds value to the air cargo supply chain. And we think that our solutions and our expertise helps everybody, again, make better commercial decisions. So getting into the primary content I've got prepared for you all today, we're going to split this up into two sections. First being kind of a current state of the market, what has happened, what is happening from both a supply and a demand perspective. We then, in the second part of the report, focus specifically on our capacity outlook. Of course, at the beginning of each year, there are several organizations who will provide an outlook on demand and capacity growth for the upcoming year. However, the shock that began end of February, beginning of March in the Middle East really put a pin in things in terms of cargo or air cargo growth for the year. We've decided to update our capacity outlook through the remainder of the year, call it post-Middle East conflict. So I'll walk through that with you as well. So we've all been there, we've all lived it, we've all breathed it. The second quarter was quite turbulent for our industry. You can see the timeline that we've got illustrated on the slide here. I won't call out everything on that timeline there, though I will call out is that even the dot on the furthest right side of the timeline is now out of date because that preliminary agreement, I suppose, never really happened. However, four key trends that my next few slides will focus on, of course, the Middle East conflict that I've already mentioned. Demand is still growing. Despite tariffs, despite what's happening in the Middle East, we are still seeing year-over-year growth for our industry, which is nice. That's, of course, driven by technology. I'm sure we've read about that. We'll dive into that a bit deeper. What parts of the world, what types of technology are driving that growth? And then, of course, it wouldn't be air cargo if we didn't talk about e-commerce. So we'll focus on that as well. Looking at the global capacity picture, for the month of June, we're still seeing year-over-year growth of 4%, despite what has and is transpiring across the Middle East and Gulf regions. Even with Middle East capacity being down, you can see illustrated on our map here, Middle East to Europe down 13%, and Europe to Middle East down 11%. We're still seeing global growth of 4%. Really, all other parts of the world are, I don't know if benefiting is the right word, but are seeing increased capacity in the month of June. The bar chart we've got off to the right there is a snapshot as of the 22nd of June of how the recovery is trending in those key Middle Eastern and Gulf airports. So still not 100% recovered in places like Doha and Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but still seeing some positive momentum. We're all living this. Yields are high, fuel is high, fuel surcharges are still out there. Call it fuel surcharges, war surcharges, peak surcharges. Everyone calls it something different. Hey, the good thing is that in recent days, weeks, we are seeing some things on the fuel side returning to normal, which is nice. I think what is interesting in just these past few months is just how quickly our industry reacted to what happened, right? Yield, fuel, Brent, all of it kind of changed in unison. We partner with Zeneta, who some of you may be familiar with, on yield data. So through the end of May, we saw global yields up 44% year on year. I mean, you could see below that how that plays out at a regional level as well.
Hey, and by the way, real quick, Ray, just to let the audience know that if you have questions, put them in the chat, and occasionally I'll read those uh, to Ray so that he can answer them as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Great point. It's been several months, even several years of year-over-year demand growth. However, in January of 2026 was kind of the first time we didn't see year-over-year demand growth in quite some time. I believe, according to our statistics, up until January, we saw 33 consecutive months of year-over-year demand growth, which, again, according to our statistics, was the longest span of kind of consecutive months of air cargo growth that the industry had ever seen. So, it wasn't an astronomical decline year over year. And ever since then, we're back into the year over year positive growth territory, which is great. I didn't want to come into an Air Forwarder Association presentation without a slide being US focused. So I was able to put this together this morning. I have filtered our demand growth map to US exports. Strength on the Transpac and the Transatlantic in the first 4 months of the year, with Trans-Pacific being up 4% year over year, Transatlantic being up 3% year over year, and exports into the Middle East being up 9% year over year. On the right-hand side of the slide, and indeed, if you were already a Rotate client or consumer of our data, you'll know that kind of I call it our secret sauce is the level of detail we're able to get into at the commodity level. You can see on the right the commodities which are driving the growth or the strength in US exports this year. Chemical exports into the Middle East, even technology exports into South America. And also actually interesting to me was the decline in healthcare for the first 4 months of the year, possibly tariff driven. I didn't get a chance to dive into it in a lot of detail this morning, but interesting to see just the ups and downs at commodity level for the US export market this year. Zooming back out to the global picture here, I think if you're on LinkedIn or reading the various trade media outlets, you would have picked up that technology exports out of North and Southeast Asia have been primarily what's driving global growth for 2026. Indeed, that's somewhat of a response to tariffs that went into effect at the beginning of last year. Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, all seeing strong year-over-year growth, with exports coming primarily into the United States. Next slide here. The three primary commodities driving that growth within the technology sector being cloud computing, computers, and semiconductors, all seeing tremendous year-over-year growth, again, coming out of Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam.
Are they all going to the data centers?
Yeah, indeed. So in our last Rotate report we did about 3 months ago, we we studied where the customs clearance of these cloud computing devices and semiconductors were being performed, and indeed they're kind of co-located in parts of the country where these massive data centers are being constructed for AI computing,
Mhm.
so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then the fourth kind of factor still driving year-over-year demand growth for air cargo is, of course, e-commerce, though it is not the um, traditional growth into the US that we've been reading about for years. So last year, 2025, e-commerce grew 21% year over year. Thus far in 2026, only 6% growth, just due to imports into the US stagnating. But of course, Europe and Asia picking up a lot of that demand that was formerly coming into the United States.
That coincides with the discontinuing of the de minimis into the US, right?
Yes, exactly. And so effective tomorrow, also the European Union will be implementing kind of their version of the same, with the €3 surcharge or fee being applied to those low value customs clearances. So indeed, our teams at Rotate will be studying what happens there from a capacity perspective and from a demand picture. But I'm sure that that's all something we're all interested to see how that plays out, and if indeed e-commerce is quote unquote no longer welcome into the European Union, where does it go? Does it go into South America? Does it go into Africa? Um, I suppose only time will tell. So now shifting to the capacity side of things. Um, Prior to the Middle East conflict occurring, we saw that global capacity was set to grow 4.2% in 2026, driven mostly by additions of capacity across belly and freighters. We've since updated this due to the Middle East conflict. We're now only expecting to see 3.4% global capacity growth. Um, the next few slides I have here will kind of detail where that growth is coming from. First, wide body belly capacity is still growing. I think one of the best stories we've read in 2025 as well as 2026 is that the aircraft manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus, have put some momentum behind their order books and are actually delivering aircraft to the airlines, which is quite nice. So indeed, wide body belly capacity we see will still grow 2% in the second half of the year. Um, I know certainly US carriers are taking deliveries, but also the order books that the Middle Eastern carriers have and the number of deliveries they're taking is actually quite tremendous when you start digging into those details. But in almost all parts of the world, wide body belly capacity will be increasing in the second half of the year. Um, on the freighter side, um, obviously still a lot of 777s in service and remaining to be delivered. So a lot of 777s on order, 33 of them to be exact. We do, of course, see some retirements happening in 2026, but the order books that are out there on the next generation 777, as well as the A350 freighter, according to our figures, we see 107 A350 freighters on order. But in the second half of the year, so between June and now, we do expect 33 new freighters to enter the skies. Which will be great because it seemed like for a couple of years there, all we were reading about were the delay of freighter deliveries and how the 747s continued to age and were somewhat less reliable from a maintenance perspective. So it's good again to see new freighters entering the market again. This chart here provides a year over year outlook of both belly and freighter outlook through 2031. So 2026 and 2027, we expect to see 24 and 23 billion ATKs of additional capacity added to the market. We do expect somewhat of a dip going into 2028, generally driven by the 767 and 777 deliveries and production lines no longer existing by then. But indeed, in 2029 is when we expect the delivery of A350 freighters and the next gen 777s to pick up again. Um, so it's not that there won't be deliveries in 2028, just a bit of a dip as we shift into new production lines and new variant of aircraft. On the 767 front, a majority of the deliveries that we will see in the second half of this year are going to UPS, which makes sense given the retirement of the MD-11 fleet at UPS. So they'll be taking on 13 new 767s this year. And you could see a few other various carriers spread across the Middle East, Asia, and a few integrators also taking on the last remaining 767 deliveries in 2026. We're also seeing somewhat of a slowdown in conversion activity after the peak we saw in COVID. So in 2023, we saw 146 redeliveries or conversions occur. We only expect to see 38 of those in 2026, with kind of split into thirds across narrow body, medium body, and large wide bodies. Beyond that, we are reading about still certainly demand in text to freighter conversions. It's certainly not as many conversions occurring as there are just brand new factory deliveries, as I covered on the prior slide. We are still seeing retirements. A majority of what we will see this year are one on the MD-11 fleet, UPS, Western Global, although FedEx, most of those are now returning to service. So we'll see 34 MD-11s get parked sometime this year. Also still seeing some A300 retirements, and also a significant amount of narrow body retirements with older generation 737s. The 21 747 retirements does seem like a large number, but we did call out here kind of as a reminder, there are still over 200 of the 747-400 variants in the service. So still the Queen of the Skies still holds true for the 747. We also saw utilization overall increase versus 2025. We've seen a 3% increase, and that's really coming from all variants of freighter aircraft in 2026. Not at the peak levels we saw in 2019, but we're certainly getting very close to those peak levels this year. And then finally, the last factor in our capacity forecast update for the year is indeed the loss of capacity that we saw due to the Middle East. So the period between March 1st and call it mid-May is where we were seeing a majority of the capacity declines occurring. That was equivalent of about 1% of full year's capacity just disappearing. I, for one, am happy to see in the data and read in the news that things are somewhat returning back to normal at a global picture. I'm sure regionally, and some of you on the calls may be experiencing different things depending on where you're located in the world and the type of business you're working or moving. But yeah, the recovery is still occurring. That is the kind of the end of our rotate report. I there's certainly no credit to be given for me in producing this report. We have quite a strong and intellectual consulting team at Rotate. They're the ones who are working on a daily, weekly basis on our consulting projects with airlines, airports, and forwarders. Much of the data that I showed you today comes actually from our Rotate market data that we offer to the industry. I know some of you on the call do subscribe to that data. We thank you for that. But indeed, the experience that we get from our consulting engagements and from staying in constant communication with the industry is really what makes these reports come to life. So yeah, thank you to the Rotate consulting team for helping us put this together. And indeed, if there's anything that you have further questions on that you may want to take a deeper dive into that I covered today, you can feel free to reach out to us at Rotate, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
And I
The
think also, Ray, do we have a question for the audience, a polling question today?
we do indeed. So yeah, it's a good segue there, Brandon. So Ali has just put a poll question up on the screen here for everyone to respond to. And so as you're thinking about this question, Rotate is going to be bringing something new to the market that we're calling the Rotate Sentiment Index. And our goal here is to provide the industry and its parties some sort of outlook from the general population on what's to come, right? We at Rotate, we are proud of what we've done from a market data perspective, and we can do a really good job telling the industry what has happened, or maybe even what is happening currently through our data. But if you've been in the industry long enough, to be honest, if you want to understand what is going to happen next, you pick up the phone and you ask, you talk to freight forwarders, you talk to airlines, you talk to airports. The general population of those who are participating in the industry are going to have the um, sense of what is to come. So we wanted to bring this concept to life through the Rotate Sentiment Index, where indeed on a monthly basis we want to survey the industry, airlines, airports, forwarders, shippers, and ask them this one simple question that we've put up on the screen here. Over the next 4 weeks, how do you expect air cargo demand to develop compared to the prior 4 weeks? This
Everyone
will
should
be,
be seeing that. Okay, good. So
yeah,
thanks, Allie. So it's interesting here. Most folks said about the same.
yeah,
That's interesting. Um,
yeah. I mean, I find that interesting, hey, because we're kind of getting into the heat of summer here, where you would expect things to taper off in
yeah,
July
yeah.
and August, right? So thinking that what's happened in June will continue in July is maybe a bit of an anomaly compared to past history, right? But our goal at Rotate with the sentiment index is indeed, if you're willing to participate, once we reach a good population of survey responses, we want to share the results of this survey each month with those who choose to participate. Um, we certainly have demand forecasting models at Rotate, but we want to run this experiment to see actually, are our machine learning algorithms strong, or is what the general population feels what is happening in the market, which one is more accurate, right? So um, if you're interested in participating in this Rotate Sentiment Index, you can certainly reach out to me. If you follow Rotate on LinkedIn, we'll be posting about it there. But free to participate. And of course, you'll only see the results of the survey if you do choose to submit a vote for the month.
Okay. So
So,
Ray, and I want to remind the audience that feel free to add your questions or comments in the chat. You know, the Middle East situation is at this point in time still fickle. We don't know what's happening there, especially in light of the attacks this past weekend. Do you think that the industry has just kind of baked that in and it's just going ahead? You know, is coming back and demand is still robust. Do you think it's just baked in and people are going to just work around it for a while?
Yeah, I mean that I would agree with that. I mean, and especially based on the results of this survey, right? I was really expecting that folks would vote here lower volume. Um, yeah, I mean, things have been so inconsistent, and I know some of the folks on the call here I've had personal conversations with about what's happening, and I don't think there's going to be much free time this summer, especially on the freight forwarding side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that's, you know, a lot of people have discussed that and acting and asking us about it. And you know, at the beginning we thought it was just going to be a dismal outcome or dismal outlook, but it just things just continue to pump along. I think your slide earlier regarding demand out of Asia on the technology side is interesting. It really goes to show how much of an impact those data centers and the AI development, infrastructure development is having on our industry and others.
Indeed, I mean, hey, I think if the technology sector weren't in such a boom right now, it would be a very different picture for the air cargo industry right now.
Hmm. And on the that slide you had earlier on the different phase aircraft phase outs, um, so the MD-11 is slowly coming back online, but is UPS going to bring all theirs back or what's do you know what that rollout's going to be? Or
Yeah,
is it
I
going to
mean,
be?
given how many or I'm sorry, how many 767s they have coming online this year,
Hmm.
um, yeah, if they're bringing the MD-11s back, I think it'll be really slowly. But I thought that they made the decision to not bring those back.
Yeah,
FedEx
that's what
was,
I
while
thought
while
also.
UPS was not.
Right, right. I thought that the same thing. Um, yeah, interesting, interesting. So do you keep track? Does Rotate keep track on um, the global air freighter inventory right now? I mean, I think I'd heard a statistic. It was about 650. I don't know whether you guys keep that statistic or not.
We do. I don't have it to recall from memory, but yeah,
Because
in
that's been
our
a big
capacity.
concern. That's been a big concern, you know, that, you know, it was only 650 and you had, you know, the impact of the MD-11. And of course, you said that the aircraft manufacturers are restoring their output, but, you know, it doesn't happen overnight and
Yeah,
it's still a
I
big
mean, I
concern.
wouldn't say that we're in a great situation in terms of increased freighter capacity. Um, I mean, 1 or 2 more years in delay on the A350 freighter line, that would have a big impact on things.
Hmm.
So we
Um,
we
so Benno Forster is saying it all depends on what the sea freight situation will be in the next couple of weeks, months. That's the wild card for air freight. Yeah, I would agree with that. I saw a statistic yesterday. I forgot where I saw it, that box prices out of Asia now into the US are over $5,000 a box compared to a few months ago, it was half that price. And of course, you've got capacity as well, that issue. So that's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
great insight, Benno, and nice to see you again.
So, do you basically at this point in time, with Rotate's crystal ball, do you think overall we're in for a good year, or do you think that all this, the wall is out there, we're going to hit it at one point?
Yeah. Hey, the $1 million question each year
Yeah.
that we'll probably be asking through the Rotate Sentiment Index is, will there be a peak? Will there be a Q4 peak? That's the question every year. Um, yeah, I suppose time will tell there. It would be really nice for things in the Middle East to settle. But indeed, what Benno raised around sea freight, that will make or break air cargo in the second half of the year.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, well, again, Rotate has been sharing their information with us, and thanks to Ali Norat and Ann Crampton, my erstwhile colleagues, we get it right out to you as soon as we receive it, and so you all can keep abreast of what's going on. So hopefully everyone's getting their airmails. If you're not getting your airmails, or you have other people within your organizations who you want to receive airmails, let us know so we can get them on the list as well. Uh, and by the way, Ali also just put the link to the Federal Maritime Commission chair discussion, the town hall on August 20th at 2 o'clock. You'll see that in the chat. So, Ali, we're taking registrations for that now. And if you have any questions about your airmails, whatever, give Ali a ring or drop her an email as well. Um, Ray, I appreciate you being with us today and dropping in and just giving us an update because my crystal ball's in the shop. I don't know how things are going to be going in the future. So it's good to have Rotate with us, trying to make sense of it all.
We're happy to help. Thanks again for the opportunity. It was great to present to all of you. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to me directly, or Ali and Brandon can help connect the dots.
Perfectly. Okay, folks, thanks again and have a great summer. Stay cool. And we'll be talking to you all soon. Live from Air Forwarders Association headquarters in Washington, D.C., I'm Brandon Freed. Thank you.